All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. We are Indy investors talking Indy investing. This podcast is all about just helping you, the investors here in Indianapolis that are buying, selling, doing a little bit of everything. Hopefully we can bring you some education, some tips, some tricks, just some insights on what's going on here in Indianapolis. I am really excited for my show today with Will Hall from New Paradox, just all around great guy. He's become a friend of mine and good person I look up to in this business. So really looking forward into picking his mind. Maybe I can get some tips on how I can run my business from him. So we'll see that. But with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I'm really excited to get into this interview. So Will, thanks a lot for joining me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Brian. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to sit down and do this.
Awesome. So if you are an investor and you are buying properties here in Indianapolis, number one, you should know who Simple Wholesaling is. That should be the number one thing. But you should also know who New Paradox is and what they're doing. And they are definitely putting out some good properties for investors, but they're doing a little bit of everything. Kind of just getting into, Will and I were having a conversation before we, jumped on and started recording about just like, being in the business and doing the business along with what you're selling or who you're selling to, of them doing the same thing. That's a big thing. So we're going to get into a lot of that on today's just interview in this podcast. But before we get into that, Will, I'd love to just kind of get to know our listeners, to get to know you a little bit if they don't. What's a little bit of your background and kind of how you got into real estate?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of the clip notes. We've been in business for about 6.5 years. So we started back in June of 2014 and really just got into it to buy rental properties. I was looking at buying a rental here and there, flipping a house here and using that money that we made on the flip to buy rentals, and that's how we kind of got started in it. And our main, I was working full time in medical device sales, and we just started doing this a little bit more, and I just like, you know what, I didn't really get into it to do it full time, and definitely didn't do it to scale the size that we're at. But we just, over 6.5 years, one person at a time, just kind of built, a team and a culture. And, here we are, wholesaling and flipping houses. And now really, I would just say over the last 3 years, maybe even 2.5 years, we've really put an extreme amount of focus on our buy and holds. And that's what drives our business today. So I came from a medical device background, did that for about 13 years, and then just slowly kind of hopped in it like most people do, and grew it to where it is now.
That's awesome. Those are the stories I like, because there's so many of us that I think that's, as people are getting into real estate, I think that's one of their biggest questions, of just like, well, I don't know, my uncle's a realtor, but I don't really know anything about, like, the story for most of us is like, I have no idea. Like, I bought and sold my first house. I didn't really know what I was doing, and, this kind of thing. So it's always good to, hear those things of like coming out of, you had maybe a sales background, but not a real estate background, but it comes into doing the right thing, knowing what you want, knowing your numbers. That's really what it comes down to when you're doing real estate.
Yeah. And, we were lucky too. Like, we had a lot of luck first off, both my wife and I both have full-time jobs, and good jobs at that. So the financial pressure was off, right? We were just literally doing this as a secondary income / ways to buy rentals. And when I'm talking about the flipping part, especially in, 2014, 2015, when we were getting started doing this, was like, the market was really catching a lot of momentum, right? Coming off of 08, 9, 2010, 11 and all that, So it really was a good time for a new person to get in, because we could make some mistakes, and really the market was on such fire that in 4 or 5 or 6 months, you could almost, if you made a $10,000 mistake, you could almost recoup it. So we, it was good timing. Let's just put it that way. Today it's a little tougher, I think, because the margins are a little bit thinner, but, so we had some timing. We rode that momentum with the market. Good.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. I'd love to hear just kind of how, so you got into this to, really build your rental portfolio, which you're still doing. And then you kind of realize kind of, what was that realization of like, oh, well, I'm getting these leads in, or I'm seeing these properties, and I'm not necessarily, I don't want to hold this one, but, oh, I can wholesale it. I can sell this off, or I can make this a profit. Like, how did you come to that realization, and how did that transition come about?
Yeah. So, initially we did, when we first started out, I went to, one or two. I mean, I was literally there wasn't the amount of meetups as there is today, whether that's online or even locally. Like there was one or two. I think there was only two at the time, good meetups. So, I kind of went there, talked to some people, and as I'm getting these leads in and I'm trying to figure out, we bought a house pretty quick to flip. Well, you start doing a flip and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't do and you're getting all these other leads like, okay, I got to learn how to wholesale, but I have no idea how to do it. And I just was very transparent with sellers and let them know how, what we do and what I do and how I have to partner with these investors and blah, 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 like we do. And I started realizing that, okay, I can wholesale one or two of these. And at the time, make 4,000 or 5,000, and that's just gross. It's not profit, obviously, but like little chip shops that help me keep the machine kind of rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And then, our first year, I think, I want to say, we did 3-4 a month, but I was working full time, as
Wow.
well.
Yeah.
And so that, and, of course I'm going on the appointments, and then I'm having to disp pull them on that side. I'm having to go show the houses, and then I'm also project management. And, you laugh at it now, like 3 or 4 was a lot when you're handling, all 3 ends. But, I think the light bulb for me is I basically got connected with one massive turnkey provider here in Indianapolis. And luckily we had that provider that would buy as many houses, as good deals as we could present them they could buy, right?
Yeah.
It's a turnkey provider, and I don't know how many deals they do. They were probably at the time doing, I don't know, 20 deals a month or something, so you can just keep feeding them to them. And that's how I did it. I just learned their model. I said, okay, this is what they need to be 30 grand all in on this thing, or whatever the number is. I back out whatever money I could make on it, and just did simple math. And I just turned, like, I want to say probably 50-60% of those deals went to them. Like, and that's where my momentum really built. And then I started getting a little one-off buyers here and there that I would sell to.
Yeah.
But they were my customer. I looked at them like I was a branch of, an extension of their company, trying to go out and find them deals. And I knew, the better I got at that, the more money I could make. Well, then I realized how important speed is in this game, and to turn up money.
Yep.
And that's where wholesaling really brought my attention. Was I didn't have to wait, 90 days to 120 days to get my money like you do when you rehab.
Yep.
Learned how important that was, because we're always throwing out so much money for marketing. And so that's where I realized, okay, speed. I need speed in this game. And then, we always rehabbed a couple houses, but then we just cranked it to where we just started wholesaling. And then I wasn't really buying and holding anything either. I was kind of getting a little bit in that wheelhouse where you're like, oh, I'm not, why hold this when I can wholesale it, right?
Yeah.
And so that, so then it became, I was just trying to build my business at that point in time. And everything I was making, I was funding back into the business, whether it was in marketing or resources or people. And we did that for a couple of years. We didn't really make much money for the first 2 or 3 years, because we were just reinvesting it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then, and just like kind of, because we've had this conversation too. Just like I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, and you're like, man, I need some more rentals. I've sold off. I've been wholesaling all these, or we're flipping these now and stuff. So how do you balance that game of, you really are. You're like us. You're doing a little bit of everything. You're flipping some houses. You're doing some holding. You're wholesaling some. You're selling some on seller financing. Like, how do you balance all that? And how do you know, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this? It's just like, oh, I'm gonna try to sell it for 2 weeks. Okay, nope. I'm gonna flip it. Or what's your strategy going into that?
Man, I wish I could tell you that we have this really cool,
Because I'm sure you really look at it just over the last couple of years, like, man, why did I wholesale that one? That one, I wish I could. I mean, that's everybody's. That's.
Man, I look back, there's certain neighborhoods in this, Eagledale is a neighborhood. Man, when I first started, we were buying houses for $15,000, $16,000, $17,000, $18,000. And they needed some work, no doubt. But like I'm looking back, like, man, if I would have held on to some of these, even when I got started, never mind 2008, 9, and 10, and 11, when all these deals were happening. But I do think that, I'm glad I did the way I did it, because I was, you need capital in this business, and you need money. And I think, once about 2.5 years ago, you asked kind of where I decided. I decided that I want to. I was in a another kind of partnership with another gentleman, and one of the things that I really wanted to do and go kind of a different direction was I really wanted to build that buy and hold portfolio like at a massive level. And when we got our business to a point where I felt like what's the word I want to use, that I was comfortable, like where I felt like we were stable, like as a business, that I really want to turn around and focus on our buy and holds. And that's really when the light bulb went off, and I said, I want to hold. Last year we said, hey, I want to hold 20 I said 36 rentals, right? I said 3 a month. Yeah. I want to buy 36 rentals. Well, that was hard. I wasn't able quite to do that. And because you got to project manage a lot of those, because they're usually ones that you have to rehab and then get a tenant put in place. But we did 24 of them. And last year was the first year where I was like, okay, I started to see, because it takes a lot of rentals to make money, right? And I started to see, okay, this is working. We're starting to see a little bit of money. I was, working with some banks on doing the BRRRR strategy. And then this year, I'm just kind of looking at our board. We're at 25 so far for the year, this year. And we've added some seller financing in there. And so I look at my portfolio as, okay, the deals we sell in seller financing really help my cash flow. I mean, those are the ones that cash flow. The downside is 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever your terms are on your seller financing, they're gone. They're not yours, right? So I'm really kind of working on that balance right now of still having the rentals in, obviously for tax deductions as well. But you have so many great tax benefits that we need as a business owner that those help provide. But I'm really looking at it from like, I want to make sure in 15, 20 years from now, those things just keep on going. And although they don't cash flow really great right now, because I've got leverage on most of them, once that leverage falls off, they really cash flow. So I'm looking at a healthy mix of seller financing, rentals. So the rentals give me my tax depreciation. They give me my longevity, my retirement plan. And then the owner financing deals that we're selling really help with the cash flow. And that's kind of how I look at those. And we've gotten really, really disciplined this year. I have with it. And I mean, before I would like hold all the rentals. I'd be like, oh, we can't sell it. Not that great of a deal. Can't wholesale. Or if we could wholesale it, we could make $3 or $4 grand. I'll keep it as a rental. I was basically holding duds, right? Yeah. And a lot of, which is fine. We were, where I was buying from other wholesalers. Where this year we've gotten disciplined and said, okay, hey, we've had a couple this year where we could have sold them for 25 or 30 grand, probably wholesaled them and either flipped them or wholesaled them or done something that made a profit of 20 or 25 or 30. And I was like, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it as a buy and hold. And when I did that, like the first time it was like, it really kind of hurt, like, and then, you do it 2 or 3 times and you build that discipline. And then you get to kind of watch, we watch our rental portfolio, we meet with our accountant every week. I'm constantly watching those numbers. And when you start seeing the compound effect finally happen, you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. Because this wholesale business is a lot of work. When you're running it, and I don't, not that I don't want to do this forever, but I surely don't want to be dependent on it. Like I really want to make sure. I don't know what wholesale looks like 5 years from now, right? It changes so much. So that's how that was kind of my look at it. And I put a number to it where we want to be, how many rentals. We're going to surpass it this year, and we roughly should finish out by the end of the year. We should have about 65 rentals / seller financing in my portfolio, and we want to continue to grow that every year at the rate we're doing.
Nice, man. Congratulations on that. That's exciting. I'm excited for you and stuff, but let's get into a little bit about like Indianapolis in general and stuff. So you want to have these notes and these, buy and holds and things like that for yourself. Why Indy? Why, just because you're from here, or what benefits does like Indy allow for investors to look at? Like, why is it such a good market for things exactly like what you want to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that, right? When I first started this, it was the market that I lived in. And but I didn't realize like how lucky and fortunate we are to live in this market for what we do. Like, as you know, we wholesale a lot of deals to California guys and East Coast guys and guys that can't buy passive properties out there, producing properties out there. And so we are lucky, man. We are really, really fortunate to live in a market that's so diversified.
Yeah.
You know, you can still flip here. There's still a lot of great flip opportunities. There's there's a lot of big name wholesalers in our market for no bigger than it is. Like guys doing a tremendous amount of volume. There's still plenty of business to wholesale properties. And then you got your buy and holds, your rentals. And so it makes it nice, I think, because it's affordable, right? And I think that's why people like Indianapolis. It's affordable. And the cash flow here is as good as any market. So I think there's a lot of great markets like Indianapolis probably don't get. I think Cincinnati's a good market that probably gets very little press. And Indy has that name outside of, you know, people who are here in Indianapolis, that has that nationwide, you know, whether it's Bigger Pockets or other platforms really promote Indianapolis. There's a lot of turnkey providers. So I think we're very fortunate that rents are really strong, and but yet you can still acquire properties in very affordable, you know, to buy and to refi out of properties. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I do want to pick your brain about this because this is something I'm always I've talked about a couple of times in the show, and you know, just talking to investors too about kind of the debate of like, hey, who do I buy from? Do I buy from a wholesaler? Do I buy from a realtor? Do I buy from, you know, my competitor? Like, how do my philosophy is like, buy from anybody. A deal's a deal. Like, that's kind of the thing. That's where that's kind of where I am. And I know, you know, we've bought from deals from you bought deals from us, and bought deals from realtors and all kinds of stuff. But where do you stand on that? Like, what's your advice for, or not even a stance, but just what's your advice for investors, you know, especially if they're in, you know, Colorado or New York or California, Hawaii, wherever, of like, if they are looking for deals, like, what's your advice to them of like, yeah, just set up with a realtor and just let them find deals, or set up with this wholesaler? What do you think about that, man?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different ways. I don't think it's ever been easier probably to start vetting people out. And I think you can certainly just make some phone calls. Like, you know, obviously there's a lot of great RIAs, you know, in this market to go to and to talk to people there. There's certainly platforms that are out there inside our, you know, obviously you have, you know, a Bigger Podcast platform, but there's a lot of platforms inside Indianapolis too that you can just ask. You know, you hop on a platform. Have you ever heard of these guys? You know, how are they to work with? What's your recommendation? I think it's always good to pick up the phone and talk to the person. You know, like we actually had a guy just come into our office 2 weeks ago, and he stopped in and said, you know, hey, does Amy work here? And we're like, yeah. You know, we kind of saw him like in my office, like looking at our building, you know, like looking at the address, looking at the phone. He goes, okay, well, I just was wondering, I'm from, I think it was Washington or somewhere. And he goes, you know, I'm looking to buy some Indianapolis properties. I just want to see if you guys had a brick and mortar. And, you know, it's kind of odd, but then I'm kind of like, well, that's smart, you know, like he's probably the most diligence I've seen somebody do. But I do think it's important that you probably have a third party person that can help you, like whether that's a contractor to walk these properties, whether that's a realtor that you know, that maybe you don't, you know, go through to find deals, but that helps you evaluate the deals, knows the areas, knows the streets, knows the markets. I mean, Indianapolis, just like any other market, it can be block by block when you're, especially in your downtown area. So my recommendation was, hey, talk to a couple wholesalers. We always recommend third-party people. Here's our property management company we refer to. Here's our contractors we refer people to. Like, go vet us, like, because we don't want to be on the hook. Like, we're the only person you're getting the advice from. Like, I hate that people, like, you know, I'm like, you really need to have a third party, you know, to talk to. So, you know, that would be my suggestion, is to hop on some of the forums and the websites, talk to the RIA people. You don't even have to come to a RIA meeting. You can get a hold of those people. They're readily accessible, and just say, hey, who's the top 3 wholesalers you think I should talk to? Who's a couple real estate investor friendly realtors you think I should talk to? And just kind of build your network, you know, that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just solid advice all the way around. Just having that, you know, that third party to do some kind of, all the lights just went out in here. So I'm in my office. So, So I'm going to ask you this question then. So expand on that a little bit, like third parties. How do people go about finding that third party?
Yeah, there again, man. I think it's picking up the phone and obviously depending on what market, how close you are. But man, like if you're going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, which is essentially like someone's probably going to do if they're going to come in and buy 2 or 3 houses, like fly out, spend a plane ticket and go fly out to that market. You need to see it. You need, go walk the areas, go walk the properties, meet with pick up the phone, go to one of the RIAs. Like it's really easy now to get connected with good people. At these RIAs, there's always legit contractors. There's always legit property managers that can probably tell you who they prefer to use. And I would say the more you can keep it in house, like, we have a property manager we refer people to that he does in-house construction. He manages the properties. Like I would try to get a good referral base and kind of stay with one, set of people instead of trying to GC something yourself, have another property manager. Because what happens is those people conflict sometimes. Well, this is what you should have done in order to rent it. So, my biggest thing is, hey, fly into the city, go to the RIA. I think it's a great place to start. Hop on the online forums and just go out and spend 2 days, meet with people. And I think the RIAs are great places where, because it's hard to get people like committed. It's hard to fly in town and meet with 4 or 5 different people and get schedules to meet up. But when you go to these RIAs, it's easy. I mean, I know you're at some. I mean, we definitely have a representative. And if they're there at those RIA meetings, they're putting their name out there a little bit and then just ask people, hey, I talked to X, Y, and Z. Are they good people? What do you know about them? Do they have an online presence? You know what I mean? All that good stuff. Yeah. I think we buy a lot off of bird dogs as well as you guys do. I call them bird dogs. They're wholesalers, but they're kind of just a one-man band type of deals. Mm-hmm. Those guys are great. But I think if you're out of state, you probably want to have somebody that you can just, that has a little bit more credibility, because most of those people are great people, but it's hard to tell if you're out of state, which ones aren't and which ones are. And
yeah, it's part of the game too, of what, a lot of people are pushing out for education as far as wholesalers go too, that the salesmanship is not just from the motivated seller standpoint, but also the salesmanship on the dispo side, where it's just like, we shouldn't have to I'm not going to talk you into buying a property or sell you on a property. It's just like, here's our list. If you want one, check it out, see what you want. I'm not going to be on the hook for that, because I want you to be successful. That's not what our goal is. I know you guys kind of have that same approach, and it makes a lot of sense doing it that way. So,
and you don't know what's this, I don't know who your contractors are going to be. I don't know the rehab you're wanting to do here. There's houses when I evaluate and we rehab them, I could go 2 or 3 different ways on how we rehab this house. Yeah. And so I don't know what he's going to want to do. Do you paint the cabinets, replace them? Do you do this, do that? Like do you wholesale it, quote unquote, or rehab it? So, I think that's a little bit tricky. And I also I give recommendations to other wholesalers when people call me, it's like, who else, talk to, go. And I know we've referred people back and forth, go, mm-hmm. Talk to Simple Wholesaling or, some of the other guys that I know that I can trust. Go talk to those guys. And because these people sometimes want a very specific niche that I can't always find them. Like if you're only need to find a deal, it could take forever, Right.
So. Yeah, definitely. So no, really good advice, man. Really appreciate that. Before I get you out of here, I do have one last question for you. Cause I know this is something that you've grown into and you're starting to do over the last couple of years, especially too, but joining Masterminds and getting, professional coaching and business coaching and some things like that. How has that helped you to reach the goals that you want, or even even set those goals in a lot of cases too, but kind of grow your team, set your goals, and just kind of reach those things, but then really just kind of enhance what you want to do on this real estate investing stuff?
Absolute game changer. The first mastermind I ever belonged to was 7-figure flipping. It's back when Justin Williams was still doing it, and Andy McFarland. And it was 25 grand or whatever it was. And I remember, it's a lot of money. We really weren't making money, right? So basically, I just was, I knew that we had to kind of, move in that direction. I just remember, thinking like, oh, even after I wrote the check, it was just like, oh my gosh, like what this is a hoax or something, and it was an absolute game changer. I can remember going there and I was still a one-man band. I think I had somebody helping me like do some follow-up calls. I was one person and we're sitting around eating lunch and I'm talking to these guys and they're like, I'm asking them questions about this. And I go, you mean you got a person like that sells your properties and they've never been in the property. They've never talked to the seller. And, we're talking about they had a dispositions person.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it all at the time. Like I'm buying them, I'm having to go show the houses, and I just remember like thinking like, I don't know if that would work though here. Like, like, I don't know, like how would she sell it or how would they sell it if they've never seen it and how would we get buyers and, and I'm thinking all this and it just was a mindset once you saw other people do it. And then, just as simple as that. And we implemented it and it like worked. I'm like, oh man, I can scale this. And I think that was for me, a really just kind of a light bulb of like when someone else is like, yes, you can do that. Like, that's what we do. And this is how we do it, how our process works. And I know that seems really basic now these days, but that's really kind of before these wholesaling businesses were big businesses back then. And, Ada McFarland had one and, there were definitely some people out there, but there wasn't a ton of them. And, so that was it. And I think it's just being around like-minded people that really think like you do, that have that have the same values as you do. And it's just really getting your mind, as leaders of companies, you're the leader, right? Like you're the one everyone looks up to. You're the one that everybody comes to for questions and answers. And you don't really have that other person unless you have a CEO or something that you really, it's all on you, and you feel, and it weighs heavy on you. And you don't have that person of like, hey, should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? That mastermind really is a group and a connector of ways to, man, is this really what I should do for my business? Has anyone else tried it? And they can give you a different outlook on that, and steer you away from probably making mistakes.
It always blows my mind of just sitting around. It's not even some of the presentations, but just sitting around having some of the conversations that one person will just say one little thing. And you're like, oh, what? Yeah, we can do that. That's super easy. And so you don't have to spend like the 25 grand or even the 10 grand or whatever. Just get in the same room as people that want to be, or that are doing what you want to be doing, that are a little bit higher than you, a little bit lower than you too. So you can kind of give back as well. But, putting yourself in those rooms where you can just brainstorm and throw ideas off each other. I think it's so important. But if you want to take it to the next level, there are the bigger masterminds and like some of the big dogs, and then the business coaching too that kind of comes along with it, and just the ideas and the connections that you make along with all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe Indianapolis is unique. I don't think it is, but like even like you and I were just sitting in a little mastermind last week. Like even on a local level, like we're all bad at things, right? And there's, as much as we would love to think there's one little secret out there that we have that, if we ever gave that away, we would be out of business tomorrow. There's just not. And I think the more you're open into helping each other and, even just little stuff, like, hey, who do you guys use for, seller financing, escrowing money into, or, I know I talked to Brett about another lender, for refis. Like, the more we can just be open and transparent with each other and you get around those, I think it's extremely helpful too. So even to your point, even at a local level, I'm always surprised how open our community is in the Indianapolis market. Like we're all competitors. We're going heads up sometimes on deals. But it's always done with integrity. And it's never like, I never look at it like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, honestly, if Simple Wholesaling goes out of business tomorrow, I don't think my business changes. Like I don't become like all of a sudden we pick up all these deals, Simple went out of business. And I think on the other side, if you guys double, next month in your volume, I don't know that I'm going to like go out of business. Right. Like, and so that's how I just kind of look at it. And I just, it's a really fun market. Indianapolis is a cool market. I think guys are really, the dialogue is good. And guys are, when we went through that deal in March with the COVID, like we all came together as a local market. We brought 10 guys on and we collaborated. Like, what are you guys seeing? What are you doing? You know, like, you generally care. Like, we need to make sure we, make it through this, so.
Yeah. No, really good community. I think it's good all the way around as far as investing goes, and whatever strategy you're looking to do, whether it's wholesaling, buy and hold, fix and flip, seller financing, and that stuff. There are people here in Indianapolis that are definitely willing to help. It's an amazing community, and don't hesitate to reach out to either Will or myself for any of those connections or answer any of your questions. Be more than happy to help you out. So, Will Hall, what's the best way for people to contact you or want to reach out to you if they need to?
So if you go to newparadox.com, you can definitely reach out to me there. And then obviously, if you're an investor looking at Indy, Amy is definitely your best contact. And you can find her or go to our Facebook page at New Paradox. But she's if you Google, you can find her as well. She's awesome, and she's very active in the community. And you definitely would much rather talk to her than me.
Even though she's fly fishing right now as we're recording this, I think, but
yeah, exactly. As long as she's not fishing, which we're getting into the time of year where she's not fishing. So, you're good until about April or May, and then, so yeah.
Very good. No, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any questions for me, if I can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out at brian@simplewholesaling.com. More than happy to be there for you. And with that, that's another wrap for the Indy Investor Pod. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.